those women I heard. Would you mind if I take off my shirt?
No.
The reason I want the sun on the shoulders, you can see I've still got the lump there from the accident. For those who don't know, I was in an automobile accident 33 days ago. Some teenager was driving without his lights, and I was in the third seat of an RV. And I was harnessed this way. And there was a teenager driving without his lights in another RV and hit us broadside. He was going about 50 miles an hour. We were going about 25. Flipped us over, hit us so hard that the harness, of course, went that way, and I went this way. My head went through the window, and I had a fractured skull and indentation with it. The shoulder, because I was seatbelted, the shoulder came down and hit the panel. Broke the clavicle and the collarbone. The clavicle went all the way through the muscles in my neck and back and broke 2 ribs here. How the ribs got broke, I'm not quite sure, but we rolled, but I went unconscious as soon as my head went through and that happened. So I was out for about 40 minutes, and they were prying the doors open to get us out. And so that was just 33 days ago. I can lift and move and everything. It's just 33 days. They said it would be probably a year and a half before I'd be able to move my arms like this. So you see, it's fine. But the pain lasted for 30 days, and then after 30 days, the pain went on. But it diminished. Everywhere. Well, the ribs in here was pretty bad. So to get rid of the pain, this was huge right here. This has gone down. What happened was, if you don't get a cast, your body will build a cast. It will calcify for a while to hold the bone in place. This was about this large, and as the bone seals, it gets smaller and smaller.
You didn't have a cast?
No. I refuse to wear a brace or anything except for the first 36 hours. But in the hospital, well, when I got out of the car, I saw them breaking all the other windows to get at me, to get me out. And I was in such pain that they could see that maybe I had a back injury or neck injury, so they were really starting to tear that, jackhammers, and they were trying to. So I weaseled my way out because the glass was coming at me and everything. So, but I was in and out of consciousness, and I was seeing things that weren't there, and things that weren't there I wasn't seeing, and it was a pretty bad concussion. So when I got out of the car, and stood up, nothing was in place. So they put me on a stretcher and strapped my shoulder and neck down and took me to the hospital. Then when I got there, I realized I had to get my wits to me because nobody was telling what they were to do. So I didn't tell them anything about the head injury. I just covered it up with my hair and cleaned the blood out quickly so they couldn't see it. And because I didn't want them he doesn't understand, and all this, and start doing stuff to me that they shouldn't. And one injection could put me out, and then they could do anything they want, so I wanted to prevent that. So I said, you have 2, I got in a wheelchair when I got there, I got off the gurney as soon as they could. Because if you're on a gurney, they're going to start doing anything they want to. So I got in a wheelchair, and it was pretty painful. This whole shoulder was very painful, and so were the ribs. So I told the radiologist, I said, you got 2 shots and that's it. You have 2 pictures. One here and one, around this area. That's all you got, so you better make it work. So they did and found the 2 bones broken here and 2 bones broken here. And they were all in place. They're still in place even though the clavicle had gone all the way through the muscles and back. They were all in place. So I didn't have to have any work done, so I just went back to the hotel and went to sleep for 36 hours. And the people who were showing me the property I was looking at to build a health center there in Ubon Ratchathani, Thailand, they some of them were in the accident, but they had girlfriends and wives which came and stayed with me in the hotel, but not at my side for the 36 hours that I stayed there. Now, one of the women who found the property from Chiang Mai, which is like 600 miles away from where we were, had flown there to help show me the land. Now, she was in the back seat with me, but she was leaning forward, talking with the people. So had she been at that window, I wouldn't have been damaged, but she would have been damaged worse. But she had a severe concussion, and she went blind for a while, so it's restored, but she goes in and out of images. She can't drive, and she's still in pretty bad shape. She took all that medication, the Dilant and all the stuff not to go into seizures, and keeps the brain from swelling, which means you don't remove, if you don't have the swelling, you don't get the extra nutrients into the brain to remove the bruised brain tissue. So basically, you're creating a center for degeneration and cancer in the brain. But she was for the health center that I want to build, but she didn't have a clue about the diet. And it just freaked her out that I wasn't letting the doctors take a look at my head, and that I was just going to stay in the hotel and eat raw meat. So let me tell you, right. So at 6 o'clock in the morning, we had this accident. Like it's about 1:15, we were pried out of the car and got out of the hospital. Probably by 3 o'clock, and in the hotel. So she got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she got on the plane, which is a dangerous thing to do with brain injury, because when you're in a plane, you have that high altitude, it causes expansion, so she could have had a seizure, and that could have made it worse. So she flew to Bangkok, then back to Chiang Mai. So it's 2 flights, and each one was about an hour and a half to an hour and 10 minutes. It's a lot of time up there. I waited 36 hours before I got in the plane and went back to Bangkok, where I knew I could get everything I wanted. And I have patients there, people who supply everything I want. But they got me what I wanted, except for they couldn't get the glati, which is the coconut cream. They couldn't find it there. But usually all over Thailand, glati, everybody eats it. Not everybody, smaller towns.
Why did you want that in particular? Just because you wanted it? Or
Well, I needed fats. But I had to have enough butter with me. I took 15 pounds of butter half a pound a day. So that was fine. Oh, for those people who, they were getting irradiated when your food gets irradiated. Okay, well, I put so much pressure on them, they changed the law. Now you're going to have to cite the law or download it like I did. And because they don't notify inspectors, but now you can choose to have it hand scanned. But you have to do it before you get in that line. You have to do it right before, and you just call over a manager and say, I want my food hand scanned.
I had a letter from Michigan,
Yeah.
and they gave me so much stuff. They brought up, and I was sorry, did you hear what's been going on in the media? And I'm like, yeah, I know.
But now it's on TSA's website now. But it says, it's doctor's medication and stuff like that. So you have a doctor's letter saying that your food is your medication, like I do. Then they will now. You have to show them the law, though. They don't know the law. You have to understand these people are just hired off the street, usually out of prison.
What website is it?
TSA. TSA.com. Or no, TSA.gov. G-O-V. And you just have to look for it. You have to, I forgot where it is.
What would you look for?
I forgot where it is. You'll find it. Screening, it's under screening. And then under there you have to look for the heading that says medication, screening of medication, hand checking, stuff like that.
So you can take any food you say?
Well, I think that you can show that to them and say, I want this hand checked, and just tell them the doctor, put you on a diet, and that's your prescription, that's your medicine.
But you wouldn't have taken meat.
Oh yes, I take
Oh, you
meat.
took
Oh yeah.
everything.
Oh, I take everything.
Honey,
Well,
butter.
I take enough meat for 24 hours, 36 hours, because it takes 24 hours to get from here to Bangkok.
Oh, you can eat it the same though. You can take anything on the same week. As long as
But
you
I
take
don't
it
want
out.
it scanned.
Oh, I see.
And if you're going to take a big load of food like I did, I took 30 pounds of butter because I was taking 15 to a father and son who were on the diet. So I had 15 pounds for myself and 15 pounds for them. So I put it in a box with, the styrofoam, not really styrofoam, it's plastic now, and then with ice packs with the 30 pounds of butter. And if you get an e-ticket and you check in with the porters outside, they will hand inspect so it never goes through radiation. Yeah. But you have, no, if they hand inspect food while you're walking through, you're going to take it on the plane, carry it with you, a carry-on.
Yeah.
Then they will take everything out and they will look at it and say, okay.
The stuff that you check on.
No, they don't put their hands in it. Sometimes I've had some people ask me to drink or taste something because it might be, like water or something like that. They might be nitroglycerin, so they want me to taste it.
But the stuff that you check
If
on,
it kills me,
you do have a choice the stuff you check on.
Yeah.
If you go to TSA.gov and also to
Yeah.
doctor.
Even your
Right.
hands-on luggage. You're taking some hands-on luggage and you're walking on with it.
Then you have to show them that paper.
Where they
Say,
go through the
listen, I
sheet.
want you to hand check this. This is the law.
Right.
TSA's ruling.
Okay.
Your 30 pounds of butter went in the baggage then?
Yeah, went in the baggage.
What does TSA stand for?
Transportation Security Association or something like that. Agency. Transportation Security Agency.
So if you let it get irradiated, it's yours, isn't it? How much?
Well, if it goes through one time, it's not going to be so bad, but if it goes through several times, it'll be bad. But I can't afford it because I had radiation therapy. I mean, tens of weeks of it.
Yeah.
Even though it was 36, 37 years ago. If my food goes through there, I get nauseous.
You don't
Even
walk
more.
through there either, right?
No.
They just say-
Oh, no, you can walk through. That's magnetic.
Oh, that's magnetic.
That's magnetic for human.
But how about the scanner when they take you out? They want-
That's also metal. That's also magnetic. That's just checking for metal.
What does the X-ray do to the food?
High radiation. Puts radiation in the food. Yeah. It irradiates the food. Oh, I can tell in a flash.
You didn't take eggs because you knew eggs would be readily available?
No, I took enough eggs for 36 hours.
Oh, you did.
I always take enough food to last me 24 to 36 hours.
How can you tell is it by taste or feeling in your body?
Feeling in my body. Start getting nauseous. A little bit nauseous, a little bit of depression. So that's that. Let's get into Q&A. Start over here this time. Do you have a question?
I don't think I have enough knowledge to ask the question.
Okay. Joe. Okay, we'll come back. Linda?
Me?
Yes.
Me?
Yes.
Oh, I haven't thought of one yet, so come around.
Okay. Do you have a question? All right. Do you have a question?
Yeah, for someone new, what's the best thing to start eating? I mean, in other words, there's a lot of stuff here. Is there something that's better than another, or does it matter?
Well, in the recipe book, I give several plans on what the best cycle is for your body.
Okay.
And basically, starting with the vegetable juice to get the enzymes and vitamins and minerals going in the body. It will alkalinize the blood from a long period of sleep because after 5 hours our blood becomes cannibalistic. Our body starts eating itself. becomes very acid after 5 hours. So I recommend that people set an alarm, wake themselves after 5 hours, eat an egg or something, and go back to sleep.
Wow.
But when they get up, even if they do that, they still should have a juice, green vegetable juice to alkalinize, get the digestive system going with lots of enzymes and vitamins. And then the next meal should be about an hour from that, should be a meat meal. Because that's very important, because that determines what your food is going to be run through your body, your lymph system, your nervous system, and your lymphatic system. If you eat any foods that are high in carbohydrate, including milk, you're going to create a lot of advanced glycation end products, 70 to 80%. And that'll make the blood, the lymph, and the neurological system sticky. So cells start, and all the transmissions start being very sluggish. Also causes hyperactiveness, unclear thinking. So if you have a meat, anything that's high in carbohydrate. So if you go for fruit, a milkshake, a smoothie, any of those things with fruit, high carbohydrates, carrot juice, anything like that, even milk is going to be too much sugar. It will make the system sticky. If you have meat as your first solid meal, the body makes pyruvate as the sugar. And that's only a 7 to 8% byproduct of advanced glycation end product from 7 instead of 70 to 80, which carbohydrate has. So it's a very clean sugar product. So the brain functions very nicely. You'll stay calmer, be more direct, be more focused through your whole day. And save your fruit for the afternoon, somewhere between 2 and 5 o'clock. And then you won't have that problem. And then you go back into the meat again in the evening. But if you're diabetic or have hypoglycemia, then of course you want an afternoon meal. Instead of having 2 meat meals, you need 3 meat. Do you have a question?
Yeast.
Yeast? Eating it or body? Yeast?
Body yeast for 4 years, trying to get rid of it. How does this whole thing work with regard to systemic yeast bloating?
You mean abdominal, vaginal?
Yeah,
abdominal. You have to remember, yeasts are there to eat all these advanced glycation end products. When you have all these waste products from high carbohydrate foods, yeasts are there as your friends to eat it. So you don't have a lot of symptoms while they do their job. You need to have a lot of butter. Butter is the main thing that will soothe the skin. You can always, if it isn't vaginal, you can, and it's on the outside or on the feet, anywhere where you have a yeast on the surface skin, you can put the Primal Facial Body Care Cream on page 145 of the recipe book. That takes care of itching within minutes. And also the dryness. But if you have internal, then you need the lubrication moisturizing formula. This is on page 146 to 147, I believe it is, of the recipe book. No. Coconut is mainly 60% to 70% solvent reactive. Also pressed oils are 60 to 70 or 90% solvent reactive, so they don't soothe and protect the skin. Only butter will do that. Cream won't do it. Cream won't even get near the skin. Cream is all absorbed by the glands in the organ and nervous system, so it will never get to the skin. Butter is the only thing that gets to the skin, especially if you're using the lubrication moisturizing formula, because it allows it to be slightly pre-digested with the lemon juice in it, the egg with it. So it allows the liver to handle it easily and get it to the skin. Otherwise, our bodies are so deficient in fat that, it's like you're in an orphanage, the kids that are in line first, they'll eat it all, and the kids at the end don't get much. Well, that's the way it is. Our bodies are so starving that it will all be usurped before it even gets near the connective tissue and the lymph and the skin. and often the bones. So that's why I worked with the formula and came up with the lubrication formula, or actually Awanza came up with the lubrication formula, so that it could get to the skin and bones. And you'll see the difference if you have the lubrication formula for a month, and you'll see this changes in your skin, and then if you stop eating it, you'll see that your skin dries. Even if you eat, a whole pint of cream a day, it still won't work as a half a cup of butter will do in the lubrication formula. Yes.
So, can do that?
Is a friendly thing.
It's a friendly
Yep.
thing, okay.
And if you don't want candida, stop eating all this carbs, because that's what it does.
I haven't been eating carbs, and I'm trying to.
You don't have to eat it now. You can eat it any time in your life. It's just byproducts are in your body. Your body's built on it if you ate them as a child.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it takes 40 years to clean all that garbage out of the system. 40 years. It took your body 21 years to finish building itself. It takes 20 years to break it down and 20 years to rebuild it. And it does a little at a time, so it takes 40 years. I'm only halfway. I'm just 20. In December, I was 21 years eating meat on a daily basis. So I'm only halfway. A little more than halfway.
So this diet, and then it sort of augments this healthier to eat things, the butters, and this lubrication formula.
Yes.
Is the main deal.
Right. It's to subdue the symptoms so that it can do its work, so the yeast can do their job and help you break down that stuff and get it out of the body.
So this one, like things like the honey, does that exacerbate the situation?
No, sometimes it'll cause more detoxification unless you're eating the honey with some fat.
Right.
Honey
Like
and butter is good.
butter.
It's
Right.
fine. Yeah.
So to
That
get-
won't exacerbate it.
Okay.
Honey alone might force it to detoxify. Or if you're not eating enough meat and a lot of honey, that will cause a problem.
But the honey has sugar in it, and that's very.
Only 10% of it's sugar. As long as it's completely unheated, the bees fan the honey, keep it at 92.8 degrees. As soon as it goes up to 95, they abandon the upper hive and then go down further and keep fanning that. As long as they will not eat that honey unless they're starving. The honey that's heated over 92.8 degrees, because it causes sugar reaction. Bees are already hyperactive enough because that's what they live on. The honey, the nectar. And they don't really eat they don't eat the nectar. Even when they're eating the nectar, they vomit it first, let it break down with the enzymes, and then eat it. That's what honey is, bee vomit. The bee has gone and collected the nectar, swallowed it. It's insulin-like substance, mixes with it with some other enzymes, and then they go back to the hive and vomit it. And they let it break down, and then they'll go back and make a meal of it because it has to break down. So for us, it's pre-digested nectar, and it has insulin-like substance in it, which helps convert it to enzymes for digesting protein. That's why if you eat a lot of honey without eating meat, you're going to cause a problem. You're going to cause more of a protein deficiency and have sugar-type reactions. If it's heated, you will have sugar-type reactions because it destroys that enzymatic properties that it has in it.
Can you keep the honey at any temperature? Because the guy's farmer's market, he says, oh yeah, keep it in the sun.
No, you don't want to do that. The bees don't keep it in the sun. They keep it out of the sun.
But is this saying that the top, the honey gets heated to a very high temperature?
No, if it does get too hot, they will abandon that part of the hive and just move lower down.
How do we know that we're not, the honey that we're buying is not abandoned honey?
Well, some of it will be. If it's from a desert, if it's like from California, you better believe. And if it's a summer honey, you better believe. Sage is a winter honey. Spring is a spring, cultivated and collected in the spring, so that one will be okay. Citrus is all winter and spring honey.
What's the summer honey?
Alfalfa, what What else do they?
Clover.
Clover. Yeah.
Ones that are most prevalent in the stores, right?
Yes, that's it.
So basically avoid the summer honey.
Yeah, avoid the summer honeys. You know, not all of it will be advanced. And, not all of it will be heated, but some of it will. Some of it, what you're eating.
When you travel, you take a lot of honey with you.
Oh yeah, I take a quart.
What do you do with it and why do you use so much?
Well, I mix it with my butter, and also I'll have lots of hits of it after meat, or have it with my meat.
Just good with the enzyme activity?
Yeah.
To help with digestion?
Yes. Well, I had the vagotomy, the stomach, although the nerves to the stomach were severed, so I still need help in digestion.
But you say more than the average person.
Probably. But it still helps. I mean, everybody needs those enzymes, and they can use them throughout the body, so
So it's not a
a lot of honey is helpful for anybody. Yeah.
So
But if they have candida and it causes more itching, then they need to eat it with butter for a while.
So how much would an average amount of honey per day be?
Like I said in the recipe book, 6 tablespoons if you're eating a pound a day. 6 tablespoons of honey is a lot of honey. It's 3 ounces of honey a day.
Easier to get done with the butter, right?
Pardon?
It would be easier to get done with the butter.
It is nicer with the butter. I love it.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. It depends upon the person's taste. I love honey by itself. And a lot of people, go for what Jeff had in the hospital. And if you're in a coma, you need it 50-50. But if you're not in a coma, it should be an average about 7 tablespoons of butter to 1 tablespoon of honey. Yeah, that's fine. And you can also add a tablespoon of cream in your vegetable juice, but don't put the cream in until right before you're ready to drink it, because the minerals will bind with the cream, and then you won't be able to absorb the minerals in the juice. Well, I'm going to get to people. If we're talking about just the honey for that period of time, do you have questions?
With this, you were talking about the skin. Would the facial system also work for chocolate?
The primal facial body care cream is better for the lips. No, that's an external. That's external. That you put honey and butter in your mouth. See, people who get chapped lips and a dry mouth, it's because all of the minerals, most of the minerals that you ate in cooked food are cauterized. So it's like if you take clay, it's malleable, and you fire it, it turns into either glass or rock or hard substance, like we have pottery. This was soft clay and it was very malleable. Now you look at it and it's hard. That's what happens to minerals when you cook. Get up to 141 degrees and you've hardened half the calcium that's in any food, like in milk. Half of the calcium has been hard. You can't assimilate properly. So most of those minerals go into the brain and nervous system. So when the body detoxes the minerals from the brain, guess where it goes? That's what the plaquing on your teeth is. It comes out the gums, the tongue, white on the tongue, the salivary glands, the tear ducts, the earwax, the mucus. All of that white stuff that comes out of there are toxic minerals from cooked food coming from the brain. 40 years to get rid of it. I barely have any. I used to have such thick plaque on my teeth. All of them. It was phenomenal. Now I just have a little bit on the back side, not every night. I'd have to go without brushing my teeth for a week to have the plaque healed up. I've had a geographic tongue since I was born. Crack. We call it geographic tongue. Like a cat or a dog, I can hold liquid in my tongue and drink that way. Okay, you have
What's it called again?
Primal-Facial Body Care Cream on page 145. That's the only thing that's on page 145. The rest of it.
I was talking with friends and they said that most of the lands have been cleared of all the good minerals from the glaciers, unless we put glacial rock dust or whatever back in the soil so we don't have all the minerals we need.
These are people who are on vegetarian diets or trying to blame now the soil for the lack of nutrients in their body. Okay. Very few minerals do we need. And if the plants weren't getting the minerals they need, then there would be a problem. But like I say, it's mainly vegetarian, those health fanatics out there who aren't getting nourished with what they're eating. They're taking all these vitamin supplements and everything, and their diseases don't go away. So they need something to blame, so now they're blaming the soil. It's just like Reagan and the industrial community. People are getting cancer, so instead of blaming the diet for it, they're blaming the sun. Well, if the sun was the problem, every black person on earth would have skin cancer. Be completely, covered in skin cancer. They're not. Many tribes, they don't have cancer. They don't have skin. They don't ever heard of skin cancer.
But they do have a protection on these things.
Pardon?
But they do have more protection than us for being diet.
It's because of their diet. They were eating raw meat for, thousands of years. We've been screwing around with cooked food for 10,000.
The little cooked food is made of white.
Yes.
So it always used to be black. With
Now,
brown eyes.
okay, you see how I'm fairly light right now. When I eat butter and no cream, I will get dark. I mean, very dark. And if I eat lots of cream, I will go white. Even if I get a lot of sun, I will remain white or whiter. But if I eat butter and no cream and I stay out in the sun, I can get black in a day. Cream will make it light. And cooked foods will also make you light.
But back to the question of
That's why your black people on our diets are getting lighter and lighter the older they get.
starting a garden, so what to put in the soil, and you put seaweed on the top of all these different things to replenish and put back in the soil. Any suggestions?
Take all your food remains and, including meat scraps. And if you want to tell you what I did when I had a garden, I would take fish scraps. You talk about mineral concentrations in fish scraps. I go to a fish market, get the scraps. I put it in a food processor or a blender. I chop it up first, put it in the food processor, and chop it first, then put it in the blender and blend it with water. And then I would pour it in the soil, in February. Yeah, fish mulch. But you can't get raw fish mulch. And whatever they sell in the stores, the gardening stores, is all pasteurized and sterilized up to 700 degrees. Well, the only way you can really get those minerals to be active for the plants right away is to have a protein decomposition of the fish. So you take all the minerals from the ocean, put ocean water on your garden, and it's going to dry out and harden. Seaweed is very hard to break down. It's very hard to break down. But if you put it, if you put it at the bottom of your compost pile, it will get hot enough to break down. But you'd have to put that on the bottom. Pardon? It depends. If you want larger, sweeter fruit, use your fish emulsion. If the vegetation, seaweed won't do it. It doesn't make it bioenriched. See, the protein builds, the soil organisms feed on the protein. Rain dissolves rock so that they can absorb, so the plants can absorb the minerals. But the soil bacteria and their excrement is responsible for the taste of the food. and the hardiness of the fruit. That's why, all of the agricultural industry gives lots of extra nutrients, nitrogen that it's liquid, and they just use urea. They'll go to have a particular dairy farm, huge dairy farms, and they'll have urine. They'll run off the urine and catch the urine in these vats and then sell it to these fertilizer companies. But the fertilizer companies sterilize it and then sell it as a liquid nitrogen and put it in the fields. It still works, but it'll damage the soil eventually, damage your trees eventually, because the trees will get harder and harder, and then they'll start rotting and be very hard, and a lot of the branches will break easily. Then rock it all soil. When all the rock is used up, you have no more minerals. So the whole idea that the soil is becoming deficient is absurd. Every time it rains, it melts. It's a solvent. You go into a archaeological book, science, you'll see that the first solvent that they have listed, water. It is the main solvent here on this planet. You can't get a better solvent than water.
But we were having rotting leaves in those days. It's just different now. We're having trees rotting leaves, the leaves are rotting, the organisms are eating the leaves,
Yes.
creating humus.
Right.
And the combination of the humus and the minerals. We're not having the humus to do that and bind the minerals. So from what I've tested, there is a reduction in a lot of the soil that are used productively every month. No fallowness, no leaves. You don't agree with that?
I agree with it, but for human consumption, if you're having the vegetable juice, you're getting such a concentration of the minerals that you're not going to be deficient. If you only had one juice a week, that would take care of all the loss there is in the soil. For the plants over a long period of time, it's detrimental. But for us, it's not a detriment as long as we can do some juice.
Even selenium, which might not be in there.
Even selenium is in a lot of things.
Okay, I just wanted to check that.
And when you're on a raw diet, you don't need concentrations of calcium and selenium. You just need a trace amount.
Yeah, I do agree.
But when you're on a cooked diet, you need lots of extra. The calcium, like I said, if you're eating foods that are only pasteurized at 141 degrees, you've lost half of your calcium already. 141 degrees. Your potassium your phosphorus is destroyed at 98.6 degrees. That's our body temperature. So if you're eating anything heated up to 105 degrees, your phosphorus is all cauterized. Not going to use much. It would be common knowledge if you'd had a government that was responsible to the people and not the food industry. But you have to take a look at Dole in office. Dole what? Dole pineapple, Dole bananas, Dole cereals, Dole everything. You have to understand who's in power. The people in power are the people who own these food industries, own agriculture. We got Bush in. What does he do? He starts the war. Why? Because his family owns military companies. They make machines and bombs. And if he goes over there and has one bombing spree, he can spend $30 million in one bombing. And that all goes into the profits go in his pocket. In his family's pocket. So the more bombing he does, the richer he gets. And also they're into oil. Our military uses 160,000 barrels a day of oil. That's our government. That's your money and my money. Paying for this military. That puts the profits in his pocket. Whoever's in power, that's why. And then not enough of us has enough of the information and disseminates. Well, I've been threatened a few times. They haven't killed me yet.
By certain companies.
But, I'm not growing fast. If my books start, becoming bestsellers or something like that, I might be in trouble, but that's the way it goes. That's the route I've chosen. The other side is beautiful. There's no pain, there's no suffering except for emotional, and that's guilt. The only thing that exists on the other side that I remember is guilt. That's the only pain there is. Guilt for having created, suffering. And that's the only thing that... So it's beautiful over there. This has been a hard life here. So me passing away would be no loss, for my experience, but for... I'd like to have all my information out there before I die. So when I finish all 5 of my books, then I won't be concerned. Okay, do you have a question? Okay.
The only problem that I've had long term with the diet, because I have previously taken lots of vegetables, is constipation.
Uh-huh.
Now your short term constipation recipe I love because it tastes like my salad dressing. But it's a lot to drink.
Uh-huh.
I talked to someone in your LA group, and she said you recommended soaking the chia seeds, so I've done that. Is that okay to do that every day?
Yes.
I can get
The other one isn't good to do every day. Chia seeds is.
So
What you do is mix about 3-4 tablespoons. You put 3 or 4 tablespoons in a jar like this. So you've got, 1.5 to 2 ounces of chia seeds. And you put 5 ounces of water in it. And you let it soak for 24 hours. The chia seeds are very tiny. They're about the size of poppy seeds. And they're round. They're not like flax seeds. They don't split open and become sharp and cut you to pieces and damage your intestines. They stay round. They put out a gel. They start secreting this gel. So the water turns into a gel, like aloe vera. And then you mix that with a lubrication formula. So you've got a cereal. And then you eat that once a day.
What's the
How much?
definition of constipation?
Oh, agony. No, I mean like not going once a day, not going once every other, and not being able to get it out.
Yeah, sometimes I'll go 4 days without having a bowel movement. That's because my body's absorbing all the nutrients and I'm not throwing much off in waste. Normally I go once a day. Before, when I was a child, I only went every 4 to 5 days because I had true constipation. And when I went, it would come out so big that it would rip my rectum. So that by the time I was 20 years old, my entire rectum was scar tissue. I bled every time I went from the age of about 10 on. And then after being on the raw diet for about 10 years, got rid of the scar tissue. Now I rarely ever bleed.
So how much of this chia would I put in moisturizing formula?
You don't put it in a moisturizer. Oh, you use the whole thing. That's for 1 day.
Oh, 1 day.
Yeah, that's for 1 day.
One of the moisturizer.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I was trying to go the other side. Can you repeat that real quickly? Because I came in very
3 to 4 tablespoons of chia seeds. CHIA. And you put it in 5 ounces of water. So let it sit for 24 hours. The water will turn into like a gel. Then you mix the lubrication moisturizing formula from page 147, I believe. And you mix that with the chia seeds. You stir it up and you've got a cereal. No.
Meat in the morning.
Yes, meat in the morning. You take that in the afternoon in place of your... You could even put a little fruit with it if you want. Yeah, put a little fruit with it, a little pineapple or, green pineapple, hard green pineapple. So it's white inside instead of yellow. We want green fruit instead of ripe fruit because there are lots of enzymes in green fruit, too much sugar in ripe fruit.
I went to the Asian store and I got a green, it was called green pie and it was awful. Is it okay to get a not bright red pure beef pie out? Instead of buying that variety? Or is it?
Well, any papaya that's not ripe is a green papaya.
Oh.
Unripe papaya, yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
that's the same variety.
It's not the same variety.
Oh.
Usually they use the almost the pear-shaped ones. But when you're talking about the Caribbean or the Mexican,
But it's okay to use the green.
green any papaya doesn't matter as long as they're unripe. Yeah. Now that recipe I come up with in the last 6 months with the chia seed, because I wasn't satisfied with only the 80% working. Too many people were calling me with constipation. Too many people, they go on the weight loss program and, then everything backs up, for some people. And some people, you have to eat a tremendous amount of eggs and they won't eat a half a tablespoon of butter or a cream, tablespoon of cream after each egg, 10 minutes after each egg. So they have a tendency to be constipated. So if they won't do that, then they have to have some means of relieving themselves. And the quick fix with the olive oil and vinegar in it, that's for an emergency purpose. But in about 5% of the people, that wasn't working. So for them, it was very frustrating. But I found the chia seeds work 99% of the time, that mixture with the lubrication form.
Is there an amount that you
Well, that's in the book, the recipe book. The formula for the lubrication moisturizing formula. With a whole lubrication formula. And that recipe's in the book.
With the spades and the gel liquid.
Yeah.
Yes.
would you do that every day? Or is it
You don't, if you're constipated every day, but I don't know anybody who's constipated every day
right?
on this diet.
So you wait until you're constipated?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what would constitute?
That's where your fecal matter keeps getting larger and larger and can't get through the rectum. That's constipation. If you're not going every 4 to 5 days and you're not getting matter building up there, that's not constipation. That just means you're absorbing all of your nutrients and not discarding much.
Okay, when your stool will fluctuate from almost liquid to...
That's not constipation. When it starts building, it won't come out because it's so hard. Constipation is when you can't move the fecal matter. Dry just means this, dry.
Which would mean, what would be the remedy for that? More butter?
Just a lubrication formula, or more butter, less cheese, or more butter with the cheese, and butter and cream with your eggs, or right after your eggs. You have a question, Cindy?
Yeah, sometimes when I'm doing the diet, I start thinking, God, I'm eating all this protein, and I don't have this constipation issue because I do what you suggest as far as eggs and cream and all that, but I start getting freaked out that I'm having all this raw protein.
On IDA people who are eating 5 pounds of meat a day, and they will be skinny. Skinny. I've got one girl who eats 3 pounds of meat a day. And she's as skinny as a rail. I would be skinny rail too. But I'm saying I'm just telling you the different responses. You're asking me about protein. I'm just telling you the various different things that can happen with protein. Okay? So if you're eating it, even if you're eating raw protein like that, you're going to be skinny. The body doesn't make a good sound fat with protein. It makes a good sugar, but it doesn't make a good acetone. Carbohydrates make an inferior acetone, but a lot of it. So that's mainly what cellulite is, and all this fat that won't burn is acetones made fats made from carbohydrates. Somebody's tape cut off here. People who eat raw meat on this diet, and lots of it, raw protein, do not have a problem. Never seen a problem.
I mean, I'm not having a problem other than psychological.
What is your fear, though?
Well,
You don't have the symptoms of what they're saying is
I
a
guess
bad
that's
thing.
what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
It's just totally different.
Completely different. It's like the difference between pasteurized dairy with the calcium.
Well, that's
you know?
true. I can't eat any kind of pasteurized dairy, but I have no ill effects from the
Raw, yeah, it's the same. You know, it took me, like I said, it took me from 1969 to 1976 before I said, yeah, there may be a difference between cooked meat and raw meat. And it took me that long to experiment with it, you know, to get to where the rabbit, where I thought the rabbit would kill me. So I eat the rabbit to kill me. And that's when I realized the raw protein digests. I didn't have any stomach problem. But I was locked into that fear.
It's hard when you come out of a vegetarian diet for a long number of years.
Well, I was only into it for 6.5 years. How long were you into it?
Vegetarian?
Yeah,
Almost 50.
15.
But I was just going to make a comment about the constipation thing, because I went from being a vegetarian and getting to where I was having a minimum of 10 bowel movements a day. I don't know what
You weren't digesting anything.
I evolved into that. It wasn't that way, but after 15 years, that's what was happening, and yet I would still be kind of bloated. And
That's because vegetation, our system is an acid, our digestive tract is an acid environment. You keep putting all this vegetation in there, and you're turning it alkaline. So all the acid bacteria, the E. coli, all of that is destroyed. All of your digestive juices go alkaline. You completely lose your digestive abilities. That's why so many people that come to me are long-term vegetarians, anywhere from 14 to 30-year vegetarians, can't digest even one food at a time. And as they got further into it, it got to be where they couldn't eat this, they couldn't eat that because they couldn't digest it. They would have allergies, they'd get hives, they have all kinds of problems. And they'd have numerous bowel movements because they weren't digesting anything. And one time I took a group of people that had been long-term vegetarians and had their fecal matter analyzed. They were not digesting even 10% of that vegetation. Normally, if we eat vegetation, we'll digest a third, even though we have an acid environment, unless you eat it too often. Then it keeps getting less and less and less because we're not an herbivore. We're a carnivore, right? Yeah. We're something like the pig, but the pig is different structurally in enzymes. They can handle more of the all kinds of different matter. You know, what do they call the chickens and the pigs? Omnivorous. Eat anything. We can eat a little of everything, but we need to concentrate on meat. We have cutting teeth. We only have a few crushing teeth, and that's so we can crush it to get it down. The Eskimo, they'll take huge chunks of meat. They'll chew twice, they'll use the back teeth to crush it, and then they'll swallow it. We grew up in a bad society, so we have these very small esophagus. You know, they have. They just swallow things whole. And you look at a dog, that little bitty dog right there, you can get a chunk of meat like that, and you don't see him chew it. He swallows that whole thing. That's big as our whole esophagus, and his will stretch easily that way. Ours can't, because we're so sick. But we don't have to chew. Meat doesn't digest here. This is ptyalin enzyme, and that only works with carbohydrate. Acids in the stomach and digestive tract digest meat.
Seems
Pardon?
Seems like we need more fat than carnivorous animals.
Only because we're so sick. You take a look at the Maasai, the Samburu, and Fulani. They don't eat any more fat, but they're all skinny, tall, healthy, and happy. We are so toxic that we need those extra fats to deal with the poisons. Because if we don't have excess fat on the body, and I'm a little thin right now, so I'm on my way back up. I lost about 15 pounds from the accident. And let me tell you, I was consuming up to a pound of butter a day, and all those nutrients were taking care of this whole area. But I healed in 30 days. 30 days from the serious accident where I could have been killed.
How much meat were you taking a day?
I was consuming anywhere from 1 to 3 pounds a day.
And butter was how much?
Butter, I was anywhere from a half a pound to a pound a day.
Back to, I wanted to,
And now in the last week I started putting on weight, so I put on about 10 pounds.
the thing you were saying about alkaline and vegetables create alkaline environment and it should be acidic.
Right.
What's the thing about I guess the environment for disease and cancer is an acidic environment?
That's all a theory that doesn't have any weight in practice. If it did, the Optimum Health Institute would work, but it doesn't. It gets fat people thinner, but it makes skinny people die if they have cancer. The amount of people that go in there thin, let's say even at her weight, she goes into Optimal Health Institute with an advanced cancer, you can kiss her goodbye. She goes to the Optimum Health Institute because it will tear her body apart.
I really like the property thinking there must be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Doing a root quick grass.
But they make people feel that way. If they don't get well at the Hippocrates Institute, they start blaming the people for it instead of the diet.
What did you say in regards to that, Bill, as far as, you just said something that hit on my vegetarian people that have been teaching me in the holistic school, is the whole acidic.
The acidic
They keep
alkalinity.
saying I'm very acidic inside
Yeah.
because I
No, you're not. You're just the opposite. You're too alkaline.
because of what?
Because your weight, anybody who retains water is too alkaline. And you retain a lot of water. Too alkaline.
What is my mom?
Yeah. So you have to stay away. I can look at her body and tissue.
Stay away from what?
See it just from looking at it. You need to stay away. You shouldn't drink so much juice. You should only have maybe one vegetable juice a day and first thing in the morning.
I don't even have that.
You may not need it.
Okay.
You're like children. Children should not be having vegetable juice. Because they're
Do you
too
would
alkaline.
recommend juicing for me then?
Well,
I mean, I haven't done any of my
Uh-huh.
diet other than I'm doing raw dairy,
Mhm.
but it's kind of my own thing.
well, dairy's, milk is slightly on the acid side. It's got a lot of alkalinizing minerals in it. But the waste of it is just slightly acid. The only thing that I've seen in the Fulani tribe, they eat 90% raw dairy. That's all. 90% of their diet is that. In fact, they have a 10-year period in the maturation of a man where he's not allowed to eat anything but milk for 10 years. And it's too alkaline. They retain too much water. It also causes a problem with their paraminobenzoic acid, so they get spots, on their skin. I'm not saying it's ugly, but it isn't even, and it's part of the character of their race, like spots on a leopard, I guess. But they get discoloration. And but otherwise they're healthy. They have no degenerative disease.
Where they're always recommending that my school people go for eating that raw food is actually doing the opposite. It's not helping you.
No, it's getting
You
you
do a
worse.
weight loss, but it's not going to be great. It's going to be harsh on your most body.
Right, and people like you, it's a bad weight loss because it's going to cause even more water retention than somebody like you. It's going to dissolve the fats in your body, but they're going to stay there. So you just keep bloating.
But not for me personally, I have
Yeah.
nor will I. But
Yeah.
at any rate, what I'm seeing is that these people that are, you keep touching on the vegetarians, and that's a lot of the people that I know are microbiologists, or microbiotic or vegetarian for their whole lives.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that are nutritionists sometimes telling me, giving me iridologies and saying, you're too acidic and you're eating too much meat or that kind of thing.
Yeah, if you get to the science of their thinking, you will catch them in a big catch-22 of bullshit.
They quote people say
because they're just spouting the information they were taught. If they do like I do, let's see what the body does. Let's take tests and see what's happening. Now, most people who eat cooked foods, all macrobiotics, they're going to have their urine's going to be acid, their acidic, their blood's going to be acidic, their salivary is going to be acidic. Anybody who eats cooked foods is always going to lean. I don't care if they're vegetarian or not. They're going to lean on the acidic side.
So what's your urine pH?
All acidic. They should be acidic.
Like what
We're
numbers?
acid people.
So like what are your numbers? If I were if you would do the paper, or what? Or how many numbers?
I think the last time it was 5.67, something like that.
Do you eat saliva?
Yeah, no, the urine.
Urine?
I haven't done the saliva in, I couldn't tell you how long. 35 years. Pardon?
that would dissolve in people. Consider you
Well, you have to understand that my acid did dissolve a lot of my teeth, because when I had the vagotomy pyloroplasty, acids, because they weren't going into the stomach, the nerves were still connected to my palate, because that whole network, that whole vagus nerve there goes from the brain and the palate down to the stomach. So you get a taste and it sends a signal down. So the acid wasn't dumping down there, it was dumping in my mouth. So when I was a vegetarian and fruitarian, it was rotting my teeth away. Then when I started eating meat and lots of fat, my teeth stopped rotting. But I was eating acid foods. But they were raw. I was very acidic in my mouth. I mean, it went down to probably 4.3 one time. Yeah.
Mine's given in my mouth
Yeah.
the other day.
But like I say, I had the vagotomy. Yeah. So the acid backed up into my mouth.
I mean, when you said that they did all the something on you at that university, when they did the cholesterol testing, there's a ratio that
Right.
supposed to come out.
Mine was terrible.
So I had mine, it was like almost like 280, or they were like freaking out.
Mine was, I think, 297, something like that.
And then so that ratio is
And the LDL to HDL
Right, but it
doesn't mean a thing when you're on this diet. Forget it.
So the higher the better.
Yeah, because you're discarding a lot of toxic fats when you're on this diet.
And that'll show up in the blood.
Then you'll have a higher cholesterol level. So I say, if you have a 600 cholesterol level, I'll applaud you. Because that means half of that stuff or more is old toxic cholesterol that you're dumping and relieving from your body. I did a test on it. I did 11. That test cost me $6,000 per test, because he had to figure out a way to find out what is old cholesterol and what is new cholesterol. And there were certain properties of the old cholesterol that showed up because of the cooking process. It's like you look at a vitamin C under a microscope that's been pasteurized and one that's raw, and one looks like a plate that is actually like glass, and the other one is radiant and it's like alive. It broadcasts light, and it's very different. So he found a way to check the cholesterol for the same thing. And we checked cholesterol in animals who were eating cooked and raw, and me as far as eating raw. And my cholesterol level was about 522 at the time. And 40% was new cholesterol and 60% was old toxic cholesterol. So I was happy.
So high cholesterol can be your body getting rid of that.
That's right. Absolutely. If you're eating good foods. If you're not, you just keep adding to it.
So if you have high cholesterol and you're
It's
not
a-
eating good food,
It could be a problem.
right? And so what you would do for high cholesterol would be to start eating fat.
Eating raw fats, good
Yeah.
raw fats. And protein handles and utilizes fat, gets rid of fat. That's why the zone diet works. People who are fat eat meat, takes the fat right out of the body.
Why does it take it out of the body?
It burns it up. It turns into the pyruvate. The body can make pyruvate from the meat, the protein, which is pyruvate is a protein sugar, and pyruvate is responsible for utilizing fat as energy. You need 80% fat, 15% pyruvate, and 5% either alcohol or vitamin C, citric acid cycle it's called, of utilizing fat as energy. So the more protein you eat, the body goes for that ratio, 15 to 80. So if you're eating a tremendous amount of meat, you're going to be knocking the fat off pretty quickly. For most people.
That would be the good thing to do if you had high cholesterol.
No. I'm saying if you were on a bad diet.
Right, on a bad
Yeah,
diet,
right,
high
yeah.
cholesterol. I have a friend who was 345, bad diet. He had that cholesterol, like junkie, very fat cream, all that. So, you switch yourself to LA?
Hold on, let me go around. Do you have a question?
I was going to ask about triglycerides. I was thinking one was too low.
No, doesn't matter. Raw diet doesn't matter.
Okay.
The only thing is you have to distinguish between what fats do. Oils are all 90% solvent reactive. They will dissolve compounds. You take fat and you take oil like olive oil or safflower oil or flax oil, any of them, and you put them with a substance and it will start disintegrating that substance, breaking it down, melting it. So will coconut cream, only 60% solvent reactive, not 90 like in pressed oil, like other pressed oil. But when the body takes in butter or cream or animal fat, the body can use it 100% to protect and lubricate, or it can use it to dissolve and burn. It's entirely up to the body what it does with it. That is a nutrient. If the body's lubricating with it, it's a nutrient to protect the cell, and it's a nutrient if it's burning it, utilizing it for energy. But what I'm talking about, the other oils do not protect a cell. They do not protect its membranes. They will dissolve that membrane. That's why I recommend the olive oil put on scar tissue. Get rid of scar tissue because it'll break it down. Raw fat, butter and cream won't do that like that. I have been experimenting with one new thing since this accident. The pain was so excruciating there, and I didn't have any of the pain formula ingredients with me except for honey and butter. So I ate honey and butter and an inch of banana at that time to help get rid of the bruised dead cells because of the high potassium. So I was eating that, and it was taking care of most of the pain in the rest of my body except right here. Excruciating pain. And I had to lie only on this side, and I had to sleep that way for 36 hours. And I had to leave the arm like this, or it had to be propped like this, or else the pain was excruciating. So I took slices of meat, thin slices of meat. They cut them for me, one of the wives and one of the girlfriends did. And I put them over the shoulder, and 20 minutes the pain was gone. 20 minutes. So and then I saw all the tissue changing around the skin, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got young skin there again. So I started experimenting for 2 days. I put raw meat around all of my wrinkles here, because I had 3 nose surgeries because my nose was shattered to pieces, and it took a lot of surgeries to get back in. But when they do that, they cut the skin here, stretch the whole nose, and then clamp it up here. So all of the membrane is cut all the way back up to this point. So all this membrane here had iodine or methylate, which is one's toxic iodine and one of the other's liquid mercury, as an antiseptic. So they coated. So this whole area, the reason I had so many wrinkles is there because of that tissue was so damaged, and there's still the mercury and iodine stored in that tissue. So I put the meat for 2 days at night on those areas, and I went to a potluck. the next day. And everybody says, boy, that accident made you look 10 years younger. You know? I didn't tell them it was the meat right then. I thought maybe it was just the intense healing of the extra, healing hormones because of this. But then I started asking other people to do it too, and it started working for them. I'm not vain enough to do it every day. In fact, I haven't done it since. But it is working for those people who do it, and it's mostly women.
What do you think is in the meat?
I think that I don't like I said, it's every nutrient gets absorbed before it gets to the skin. So the skin is the last place for nutrients to go. Plus, it's the biggest bowel there is in the body. The lymph system secretes most of the poisons out through the skin. So the skin will always be damaged and will never get enough nutrients. So I think that my theory is that if you put the meat directly on, the cells can actually start taking the blood and the hormones that are in that blood and start using them for the localized cells. It seems to be working. Pardon?
That was in a film.
Yeah.
That film about the Jewish guy, a long time ago, and he put a steak on his bruised eye.
Oh.
He punched.
Yeah, well, fighters do that. Boxers do that.
So that he doesn't like.
That's why I did that here, because I couldn't think of anything else other than that. And I knew boxers always put steak on their bruised area.
So it's also good for your food.
Yeah, I didn't know that would have helped the result, but it certainly was a great result.
Is that broken? Was it broken? Is it
Yeah, it was broken here and broken here.
Oh,
The
that
bone went through my neck muscles and back.
So the bump right there now.
That's
what?
calcification to hold the bone in place. Its own natural cast. It was this big 3 weeks ago. And now it's diminished down here. As the bone adheres, then this diminishes. No, that dries it out. No way I wanted anything dry on it.
So what about honey and butter chops?
That just coats the skin. You know. I found that the Primal Facial Body Care Cream, that mixture works. But I didn't have any of that with me.
When you had your concussion,
I was crippled. There's no way. I had no blender. Pardon?
did you have a concussion? You were conscious enough to, what did you take initially? Were you more concerned about that?
As soon as I got to the hotel,
What did you do?
I had my chopped meat. Well, slices of meat, yes. I had the meat first and honey and butter, went to sleep. And then when I woke, hours later, probably 3 hours later, in excruciating
How lucid
pain.
were you, though?
Pardon?
How lucid were you with the concussion? I mean, were you just in and out?
I was in and out for 36 hours.
And fluid?
I didn't hardly drink anything during that period. I wasn't active. And I turned the air conditioning off and opened the windows so it'd be as hot as possible. Because when your body's cool, it does not divide cells, so healing is slowed. So I made sure that my body was hot and I kept covered. And I was already in an 85, 83 degree temperature. You know, humid temperature.
Your body
I
healed.
covered my, pardon?
Your body healed.
Yeah, yes, it does. Yeah. If I had had a hot water bottle with me, I would have put that in the bed with me too, till I was dripping wet. But I didn't have a hot water
Did
bottle.
the meat here help it heal or help the pain or both?
All three. Yep. That's what I mean. The skin just changed. Because you can see right on here, I have a lot of toxicity from all the poisons that were in my brain, all the mercury and everything. And the lymph glands in the neck take care of the brain. Dump most of those poisons once it breaks down out the mucus. The sinuses, the throat, coughing up that stuff. So this area has been drier. These lymph glands don't create that kind of dryness because they weren't as toxic, except for some mercury, lots of mercury shots in the arms. But that didn't come out like here. because the concentration of minerals, which are very drying, is in the nervous system. So this area has a tendency to be very dry on me. In fact, they used to call me lizard man, because I used to be like this, and just layers of skin that, looked like a lizard. And, since I've been eating this diet for so long, it's going away. Well, when I put that steak on there, the skin completely changed.
You're 80 years old?
82.
You were well.
I was just 57 2 weeks ago. A week ago. 17, 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Back to my question fully asked about the honey.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference in the royal jelly and public, what they do versus the honey?
Well, propolis is tree sap. And it's like a tree oil. Tree oils turn into rock. That's why that's why we really didn't have much heart disease until vegetable oils and margarines came in and hydrogenated oils. They're the ones that cause all the plaquing and the hardening of the body. If you take vegetable oils, even raw, and mix them with dirt, in a year that dirt will be rock. If you take animal fats and mix them with the dirt, it'll mold and turn into dirt. So the hardening of the arteries comes from your vegetable oils. And the reason the bees take the sap is because it's an anti-mite. Mites don't like the smell of tree sap. So they'll line it all around so to keep the mites from getting in and eating the beeswax and causing the honey to ferment or to ooze out their hive. So they don't really eat it. And I don't think that people should eat it. Right. I mean, if you want to take some and break it down, if you dissolve it in some kind of flax oil or olive oil, and maybe put some fruit in it so it ferments like pineapple, or put it with cabbage juice and cause it to dissolve, it might help you get rid of some of the hardened stuff out of your system.
And the royal jelly?
The royal jelly is made exclusively for the first few days of the bee's life and for the queen only. That's high in hormones for reproducing cells, so there's a higher growth level. It'll cause magnification of cell division like up to 10 times. Usually for us humans, it's 3 or 4 times. But that's why I say in the book, if you're going to eat royal jelly, only have it with meat or else it's a waste.
Why?
Because that's where you get the proteins for regeneration. So the hormones and the proteins together will function. Otherwise, those hormones will go to sex activity or running or energy activity. It won't go for cell division, cellular division.
What, there's freeze-dried royal jelly. I'm assuming you'd be opposed to that.
Absolutely. When I put animals on a diet of frozen meat for 3 months, they all ended up with scurvy and they ended up with mange. Every one of them.
From lack of vitamin C and
Well, you destroy all enzymes in frozen. All enzymes are destroyed in frozen meat. Plus you break down the B vitamins, B12 is destroyed.
So when we do the ice cream, we're done less than 24 hours.
Yeah,
It takes 24 hours to destroy those.
destroy them. Yeah. Quick cold freeze won't do that. But there's a process that they do now, which is a flash freeze, and they're freezing things at 170 degrees quickly within, a minute. And that doesn't seem to be causing the same damage, but I haven't had the chance to do any experiments with it yet.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know very about osmosis. I was shocked to find out I've been buying the raw turkey tenders from Whole Foods, and
again, they do that flash freezing.
But that's not 170 degrees flash freeze.
So,
You don't want to eat any frozen meat.
yeah.
Frozen dairy is the same problem. In fact, when I fed frozen raw dairy to some cats, they all developed osteoporosis in 6 months.
So what does that do?
Destroys just about everything. Just remember, when you freeze something, what happens when it thaws? It rots. That's all it does. Rots. And that's great for the earth, but it's not good for us.
How about fish that apparently they freeze on boats?
Well, it's not frozen solid. They just put a packet in ice. And those,
water.
they're used to being in cold water. In fact, I was at a friend's house in Taos, and he had a pond, and he had some carp in it. And the carp are swimming around. We woke up the next morning, and the carp is frozen in the water. It's all during the day, and the carp is swimming around. Yeah, we thought for sure all of them are dead, and they're just swimming around. Yeah, see, the fish are a different breed. Probably seal and bear, all of those we could probably eat frozen and not have the same problem. But that's an animal that's adapted to that kind of environment. I've caught everybody there, everybody here, so let's go back around.
I haven't had one.
You've got several questions.
Yes, but that was only on the.
Okay, what do you want?
Talking about. I just wanted to ask about the eggs for lungs.
Eggs for lungs?
Having lots of eggs for lungs. How do they heal? And what effort do they? What is the effort like that woman that took 12 dozen
33 eggs a day. 33 eggs a day.
That one, that older
The
woman.
infancy.
Yeah. Just explain how that's meant.
Well, it's a theory, it works, that's all I know. I can just give you theory. All the proteins are already in liquid form. There's no digestion necessary. All you have to do is realign, all the pancreas has to do is realign the enzymes for us. And with the proper insulin hormones, not just insulin, but the other pancreatic hormones that could be released all throughout the body can utilize those anywhere, so it doesn't have to deliver them to the pancreas, and the pancreas has to deliver it back to the stomach like it does with cooked food. But with raw food, the transition and transference can happen all over the body. Also, all of the fats in the yolk are completely dissolved and ready for instant digestion and absorption and utilization. There's no digestion required. There's just a little transformation in the structure. That's it. That's why eggs work so brilliantly.
Can you eat them with the protein meal?
Absolutely. Most of the time I whip, I love steak and eggs. I have my meat with a couple of eggs and honey and butter, or hot sauce and eggs and, my meat. I almost always eat eggs with my meat.
So how many eggs should you eat? If you went on a lung program doing a lot of eggs, how many would you eat a day with someone who does
That all depends upon the individual, anywhere from 8 to 12. Well, if you're talking about a small person, like somebody, let's say 4'10", maybe 6 a day, 6 to 10. But I have some people eating, some men who are 6'4", 6'3", eating, 28 a day.
you eat a day and you eat a day off now and day just for the body or not?
Sometimes I'll not eat eggs for a day or two.
It's not essential. You're not going to get some build-up of anything.
No. Not as long as you're having green juice at least once a week.
Can I ask you a question before you start around?
Okay?
Could you comment on eye disease and your experience? Because I have extremely severe glaucoma,
Uh-huh.
and I've refused to do anything home. and I've certainly lost some size. But what I noticed is when I get the diet right, within 24 hours, a lot of my symptoms go away.
That's right.
And I had a really bad cold recently, and I got worse because I couldn't stay on the diet as well with a bad cold. So I just wanted to...
You just need eggs when that happens.
You need eggs.
Lots of eggs. Eggs followed 10 minutes. Have an egg Rocky style. Everybody know what Rocky style means?
No.
Okay, you see the movie Rocky?
Yeah.
Okay, before he works out, he breaks 5 eggs into a glass and drinks it down without whipping it. That's Rocky style. And then you have to wipe your mouth like this or else it won't work. Anyway, that's without whipping. When you whip it, you destroy 3 enzymes which prevent cancer from developing or maturing or continuing. So it's best not to whip it at all. Break it into an egg, or do what I do: punch a hole in both ends and suck it out. Ultimate fast food. Then you have to clean the glass. Yeah.
And you do what after that? The cream?
Then 10 minutes later, you either have a tablespoon of cream or a half a tablespoon of honey and butter mixture.
Per egg.
Per egg. Per egg. Well, some people I don't do that. For you and some people with allergies, I do for each egg. No. You're not blending the egg by itself. You're blending, when you're having it with butter or milk or cream, it coats that protein so it doesn't get oxidized. It's only when the egg's by itself that you don't want to whip it or blend it.
So do you have any understanding of, because glaucoma is where,
Glaucoma is high sugar byproducts that are not cleaning out of the eye. That causes the body not to be able to dissolve dead eye cells. So they stay in the body and start collecting and creating high blood pressure in the eye, high pressure in the eye. Lots of protein will break that down. Eggs will help that. So when you have a cold or a flu, that's the body trying to clean that kind of stuff out. So you have to have an egg every hour. Make sure you have a little bit of protein during the day and maybe 1 vegetable juice a day. Eggs, eggs, eggs. Let me tell you, the answer to any illness is eggs, eggs, eggs. While you're going through heavy detoxification or an allergy.
and with really bad colds, you really have to let them run their course, right?
You have to let any of the thing run their course, whether it's pneumonia or meningitis. But if you know how to do it, you'll keep the pain minimal. If you have the eggs without the honey and butter, you will go into more pain and suffering. So you have to follow those eggs with the cream or butter. And never oil. Never oil. Coconut cream won't do it either. It has to be honey, it has to be butter or cream.
No honey.
You can have honey with the butter, honey and butter.
And what's the proportion of coconut butter to butter every day, would you say?
Depends upon the individual. If they have an impacted, lymphatic system, you want to try to get at least 4 ounces in a day. Coconut cream. Yes.
Another subject. I got an email talking about the women from the North Pole. They found that they have higher concentrations of toxins in their breast milk than any place on the planet. And they said it was through the food chain, the currents of all the toxins from all the companies and whatever that dump waste in the ocean go up to the north.
Bullshit. Bullshit. The U.S. government and Canadian government were using them as experiments, dropping those chemicals, dumping on, just like they did with the 1 million people in the swamps in Louisiana. They used 1 million people, Americans, in a biochemical warfare test. 1 million Louisianians. They did it with the deer throughout Canada and northern United States. And they would say, oh, they got mad, deer disease. It was the federal government that did it. Got a hold of some of their documents. 1 billion people. They created cancer in 40% of them. American.
What did they do?
They dropped a pesticide, a biochemical warfare agent. And, no, out of the air, out of the sky. Yeah, a chemtrail. They did a chemtrail. But it was a certain substance.
Well, my question might be moot because of that, but I'd like to know if it's still relevant. Is that it said that it was through the food chain that they got this?
Bullshit.
My first question was, well, if the like goes into the plankton and then the animals around
You have to
the
understand
plankton,
that
they
it doesn't flow that way. You've got huge icebergs there. You don't have that kind of flow. The way it comes is it rains there and then goes down and out, away from the poles. It never comes into the poles. They have currents around there, but they don't come from here. Everything flows away from the pole. Rains there and goes out. Doesn't flow up there. That's absolute horseshit. Sorry for that. Yeah. When I speak, I don't have my honey and butter regularly, so then the calcification from my brain starts coming out the lip. Because ever since the surgery, everything backs up. The vagotomy, where they severed it when I was 21, 20.
At the time, obviously, you didn't know anything you know now. But
Exactly. That's how I got into this. Yeah. Okay, Joe, do you have a question yet? Do you have a question yet?
Just allergies. What's good for allergies? in general?
As I said, eggs. Eggs and meat. Eggs, followed by the cream or butter.
did you say 10
Every
minutes?
hour and a half. Pardon?
You said after the egg, 10 minutes later, either cream or butter.
Correct.
And how many the honey butter?
Pardon?
Give me the honey butter.
Yes.
Half teaspoon?
Yes.
Okay.
Half a tablespoon of honey butter or a whole tablespoon of cream for each egg. Normally.
And also misalignment.
Pardon?
Skeletal misalignment.
That's the same thing. Mainly proteins with your butter. Lubrication formula good for the spine. Okay. What's that?
3 8-ounce green drinks a day.
What about it?
Do I still need 3 green drinks a day?
Yeah, you have so much bile in your system that you're too acid. You still need the green drinks, and you will for a long time. I'm just now down to 1 or 2 a day. You know, it took me 21 years to get there.
I can even do 4. Right?
Pardon?
I could even do 4 green drinks a day.
I think 4 is a little too much. 3 for you? Yeah.
But you were saying some other people don't need that.
Correct.
So how would you know that?
Yeah, that I have to determine by seeing your eyes.
What did you say the honey butter proportion was after the egg?
22. 1 half.
1 tablespoon of cream, a half tablespoon of honey and butter.
And honey butter, what combination?
I said 7 to 1.
7 to 1. That's what I thought. Creepy laughs in the book.
7 tablespoons to 1 tablespoon.
7 tablespoons of butter to 1 tablespoon of honey.
But 1 to 1 tastes better.
You're hooked on it. Are you in a coma? Maybe. But you'd be surprised once you, even the 1 to, I do 1 to 14 now.
Oh, okay.
And it's still so very sweet for me.
Wow.
But it took me, I was doing half and half.
What about that?
Worked it up.
What if you have like sugar addiction? Should you do more or less?
As long as you don't do honey alone, do it with the honey and butter. Stay away from honey and cream if you have that problem,
Really?
Why?
because you'll bloat.
Oh.
Anybody who has a sugar addiction has a fluid problem in their system. And they should have very little cream, mainly stick with butter and
As much
honey.
as you wanted the butter? and the honey?
Pardon?
Honey, you have as much as you wanted the honey butter?
Yeah. 'Cause it doesn't cause water retention. cream is very difficult for the liver to digest because the liver basically has to turn the cream into butter. Most of it. It'll use some of it in its cream form to help the nervous system. But any that's left over will cause water retention in some people who have sugar addiction.
That's different than food addiction.
Yeah, very different. Food addiction is just nutritional deficiency, not for one particular element.
So what's too much cream, though? I mean, is that probably individual?
That's individual, but I would say if you have that problem, 3 tablespoons of cream a day is enough.
Friend she's aging in her 70s. She has age spots, a lot of sun damage, and bruising. What bruising?
Lack of protein and for lack of fats, but mainly protein. Oh, that's another thing. I used to have lots of liver spots there, and that 2 nights that I had the meat on top of there, half of the liver spots went away.
Well, if you put liver on it, would that specifically make it go
I
away?
don't know. I haven't tried that. I've just begun to explore this. Lack of protein. Her bruising with the spots. I've covered that so many. It's in the book. They're all chemical. Every vitamin supplement, mineral supplement, has to be processed with either heat or a solvent. That's like soaking your food in kerosene. Would you do that? Anybody tells you they do it raw, sure they do it without heat, but there's always a chemical involved. It's either alcohol, and alcohol that they use is a distilled alcohol. And it breaks things down. It eats it apart until they separate. It just etches into it, destroys everything. So if you can imagine eating your food soaked in kerosene for about 40 hours, then go ahead. Eat vitamins and supplements. But none of them are food. Even if they once were food, they're no longer food. They're a chemical. They are a drug. But for the plants, would do right, but we're not plants. When I worked at Aunt Tilly's health food store, Diane Cannon would